Hello, welcome to another episode of This, That, and the Other. And I'm kind of in a dry spell right now on what to do shows on. I run out of ideas. Like I always say at closing, I'm looking for ideas on shows to do. My show is mainly about preserving history, especially obscure aspects of history, and always looking for ideas on what to discuss. Something feasible that I can research and get the information, I'll do a show on it. I don't do politics. And that being said, what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to discuss football again. Since football is coming up and NFL season's coming up in 5 weeks, and the first NFL preseason game is going to be in a few days. So what I'm going to talk about is the most lopsided football game in history of college football. And that played in 1916. On October 7th, 1916, the Cumberland College Bulldogs took on the Georgia Tech Engineers. Back then, they were called the Engineers. I remember later on, I believe they were called the Rambling Wreck, and then they were called now they're called the Yellow Jackets. Anyway, Georgia Tech beat the Bulldogs 222 to nothing, most lopsided score in the history of college American football. And the coach of Georgia Tech was John Heisman, and coach of Cumberland was George E. Allen, not the George Allen, of course, not the George Allen that coached the Washington Redskins and Los Angeles Rams. Georgia Tech had disbanded its football season the previous year, but was still obligated to play this game against Georgia Tech. The Engineers coach, John Heisman, had been the coach of Georgia Tech's baseball team, and it was defeated 22 to nothing by the Bulldogs earlier in 1916, and was looking to avenge that game. Well, they definitely accomplished that. Cumberland tasked George E. Allen, its baseball captain, to assemble a football team for the game. He recruited his fraternity brothers and students from Cumberland's law school to play in Atlanta. Despite receiving the opening kickoff, Cumberland never achieved a first down in the entire match and opted to punt on multiple possessions. The game's infamous score can be partially attributed to 90% of the game's plays occurring in Cumberland territory, with 64 of those plays occurring in its red zone. Georgia Tech, instigated by Heisman, scored on every first down it gained. The imbalance of the teams was so severe that the final two quarters were shortened from their customary 15 minutes to 12 minutes. This will be the last matchup of any sport between the two schools. Cumberland de-emphasized athletics in favor of academic pursuits, while Georgia Tech has continued to compete at the highest level of college sports. Cumberland College Presbyterian School in Lebanon, Tennessee, had discontinued its football program before the season, but was not allowed to cancel its game against the Engineers. The fact that Cumberland's baseball team had crushed Georgia Tech early in the year 22-0, amidst allegations that Cumberland used professionals as ringers, probably accounted for Georgia Tech coach John Heisman's running up the score on the Bulldogs. As Heisman also was Georgia Tech's baseball coach, it is speculated that Heisman may have deliberately aimed for the score of exactly 222 as a numerically significant retaliation of Cumberland's 22. He insisted on the school's scheduling agreement, which required Cumberland to pay $3,000 equivalent to $81,000 in 2022 to Tech if its football team failed to show. There would have been a lot of money to fork over. In fact, Heisman actually paid Cumberland $500 equivalent to $13,400 in 2022 as an incentive to play the game. His letter to Cumberland's athletic director read in part, "I hereby offer you the sum of $500 and an all-expenses paid trip to Atlanta for your football team on the condition that you honor your contract by participating in and completing the Cumberland Georgia Tech football game. However, if this offer is refused, I shall be forced to demand that your school reimburse the Tech Athletic Department in the amount of $3,000 for losses from the projected net game receipts. So Georgie Allen put together a team of 12 to 16 players, most of whom were his fraternity brothers or law students, that traveled to Atlanta as Cumberland's football team. Cumberland received the opening kickoff, didn't make a first down after the punt. The Engineers scored on the first play. Cumberland then fumbled on the next play from the line of scrimmage. Georgia Tech returned the fumble for a touchdown. Bulldogs fumbled again on the next play. It took Georgia Tech 2 rushes to score its third touchdown. Cumberland lost 9 yards its next possession, and Georgia Tech scored a fourth touchdown on another 2-play drive. Georgia Tech led 63-0 after the first quarter, 126-0 at halftime. So both quarters they scored 63 points. Tech added 54 more points in the third quarter and 42 in the final period. Several players on the heavily outmatched Cumberland side suffered serious injuries during the game, including quarterback Charles Edwards, who was 3 times carted off with concussions. Georgia Tech scored a total of 32 touchdowns, and left end James Prees kicked 18 extra points. Cumberland's only effective defensive was an extra point blocked with a sort of human pyramid known as the climb ladder play, toppled Vichy Woods, who suffered a gruesome facial injury on the play. Despite 32 touchdowns, the Engineers did not complete or attempt to form a forward pass. All their yards came on rushes, returns, or defensive plays. Cumberland purportedly committed 15 turnovers, 9 fumbles, 6 interceptions during the game. Sports writer Grantland Rice wrote that Cumberland's greatest individual play of the game occurred when fullback Allen circled right in for a 6-yard loss. At halftime, Heisman told his players, "You're doing all right, we're ahead, but you just can't tell what these Cumberland players have up their sleeves. They may spring a surprise. Be alert. Hit them clean, but hit them hard." However, Heisman even relented and shortened the third and fourth quarters from 15 to 12. So this game was quite a mismatch. There was one thing the Georgia Tech players said that probably kept the score from being 229-0. Had Cumberland punted as normal instead of running a sneak, the score probably would have been 229-0. So it could have been seven points more scored by Georgia Tech. But it's understandable why the two schools never played each other in athletics again. And that was pretty interesting. I got a lot. I read some parts of it off of the internet, and what I was able to find out on the biggest, most lopsided football game in college football. I'll have to see if I can find out, what the most lopsided was on an NFL game sometime. I'm thinking maybe the 73-0 game where the Chicago Bears beat the Washington Redskins in D.C. in the championship in 1940. And that'll be another story for another time. As always, like, subscribe, share. Thanks for watching.